branching out can be a little bit hard, right? It can be hard to kind of step out of your comfort zone, experiment, and try something new. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. First off, though, let's get into, hey, what you drawing? Now, this one, I finally was playing around with more stuff for Trace. I know I've done a few different characters, including the Knight on this channel. Now, this is actually the Knight's lover. I have had a lot of fun with his design. Some of his color scheme actually kind of stumped me. You'll notice at one point whenever I do freckles, they're going to be like blue freckles, and he's got a lot of blue on him, obviously. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. He's got blue on him in the reference picture that I'm pulling from. In the picture I'm drawing, he's actually wearing one of his shirts, just because I thought it would be cute. And a wrap that kind of matches the crescent moon symbol, as well as essentially a pin, an emblem pin that is the crescent moon symbol that is the Knight's, just because I thought that was really cute. And he's turned in a way where you can see the engagement jewelry on his, on his ear. That's the word of the body part I'm looking for. There we go. But he has a lot of blue in his reference picture design, as well as, blue hair. His eyes, you'll see in the reference picture, are like a bright kind of turquoisey blue, like almost a turquoise robin's egg kind of in the middle there. And I really like that, and there is a reason for that. Like, visually, there's a reason for all the blue in his color scheme, and that is because he is specifically a water elemental, because I love playing around with different elements and stuff in a lot of my magic stuff. And he is what I refer to as, the closest description I have is water elemental. There are technically two subtypes. You've got fairies, which have wings, and then you have flightless, which don't have wings. Obvious there as to which is which. Regardless, water in general, in the majority of my stuff, is usually, at least with my fantasy stuff I love to play around with, that's where you usually get powerful seers and people who are powerful with that kind of magic and predicting things, or even just tracking the past flow of events and things like that. Some of them can see into the past, others see into the future, others don't get straight up visions. It's a lot different, and visions they're not set in stone. I'm not going to get into all the mechanics of that. They can change. A vision is something, and I got tongue-tied again. Anyway, he is a very powerful seer, even though he's fairly young, and that ties very much so into his character, and I will get into more of that later when I've had time to do a bit of a breakdown and go into more information with his character and write up some stuff. Now that we've gotten past that, and I really hope you guys like this character, I think he's really cute. He's honestly a sweetheart, and I really like him. But now that we're done with that, let's get into the art topic. So, branching out and trying new things. This is going to be a bit more of a vague video, rather than just, like, really detailed zeroing in on things. Because this is one that I would like to kind of base a few other art topic videos around. And it's really easy to do that kind of thing. Branching out could mean a bunch of different things. It could be delving into new mediums in regard to just, like, I think the ice shifted in my cup. I don't know if that was picked up by the mic. If it was the ice in my cup. But it could be anything from, if you do primarily digital and you like to just mess around with more painterly style things, it could be branching out and experimenting with more cartoony things, or you do cartoony, try realism. You do more so lines and things like that, try digital painting. Yes, real big coming from me, who tends to stay in the lane. I say as the image in this picture is not me branching out of my comfort zone. But it is good to step outside your comfort zone. If you use traditional media and you usually do a lot of sketching, maybe try messing with inks. Maybe if you do a lot more cartoony style work or comic book work, try a charcoal or pencil study. I've tried those, I don't enjoy them. At least not very much. I think part of it is I was left to kind of my own devices to try and figure out the medium. But there is a good reason to branch out. And with trying to mess around and experiment with new mediums, it could be static images and illustration versus trying animation. It could even be trying something like sculpting when you're usually more of a drawing artist. And sometimes that can open you up to more inspiration for things because you get your brain doing something new. You get your brain trying something new, and so it's not focused on what you're used to doing in your comfort zone. You're forcing it to think outside the box that it's used to. And personally, I find it a bit fun whenever I get a chance to. I don't really show it. I don't show it really at all on this channel. I would like to eventually, especially if people are interested in seeing it, playing around with different mediums, especially some traditional ones, especially if I could mess around with sculpting or doing anything like that. I would have to get a good setup, but I would like to, because you never know what kind of things when you experiment, what other hobbies you'll find other than what you do for work. If you do art professionally, you might find a new creative hobby, which is always good because it's good to have hobbies. It's good to have things to let you relax. But you also might discover a new, just straight up passion. It's like one thing I used to do a lot. I don't do it as much anymore, despite the fact that I have a bunch of clay, so I need to try again. I used to make a good few different cosplay props back when I used to cosplay. Now, this was a good several years ago, and the best example that I can think of for the cosplay props I made, and this was just jumping in, I got some Sculpey, and I made some props. It was just jumping in like that. That was what it was. There was not really a slow build-up, it's just I really wanted to cosplay Good Bakura from Yu-Gi-Oh! First series Yu-Gi-Oh! So I needed the Millennium Ring. Well, I decided I was gonna make it out of Sculpey. It actually turned out pretty good. I'm still to this day pretty proud of how that turned out. I wish I still had a picture of it. I don't think I do. I don't know where it is anymore. And I also didn't have like a proper sealant for it after I spray painted it gold. So like it would stick to things, and it would get, if it was like against the fabric of my shirt too long, you would get a little bit of an imprint of the fabric of my shirt, of the texture of it, on the back of the Millennium Ring. I also made the Millennium Rod at one point, and I started on the puzzle, but I didn't get very far with that one before I got distracted by something else, because at the time my ADHD was completely untreated. The only reason I got the others done was because it was coming up on my first time ever going to a convention, and I really wanted to get the Millennium Ring done so I could actually cosplay. And I'm to this day really glad I did. It was fun. But branching out and trying new things is always good. Experimenting is always good. You might currently do more cartoony things and then experiment and discover that, hey, you really like digital painting. One of the biggest things, and I understand it can be difficult, one of the biggest things to do is try and get yourself out of the mindset of feeling like you need to do things perfect the first time, every time when you try something new, and that is hard. I realize that's hard because I struggle with that a lot. There's a reason I've struggled with practicing digital painting and practicing real painting, which I will say at current, because I haven't been able to push myself to do digital painting, because the fact that I can always hit undo actually messes me up with that. I tend to enjoy painting on canvas, like traditional painting on canvas, more than digital painting, because with digital painting, since I can always go back and change things, I get caught in a perfectionism loop. It's easy to do, it's very easy to do, but you have to try and convince yourself that sometimes you just have to stop with something. Sometimes you have to just let it be done, and that's hard. Or move on and say, I'll come back to this later, let me go do something else to refresh my brain. And even when you're branching out, if it's something you outright do not like doing, you don't have to keep trying to do it. You don't have to force yourself. Now, if it's a study that you should do because you need practice with that, like I know hands for a lot of people are hard. For me, it depends on the day as to whether or not hands are hard. Sometimes I really enjoy doing hands. Sometimes I hate doing hands. I always hate doing feet. Those suck. Trying to get the toes to look right, and if I can get away with just sticking them in a pair of socks, I will put them in a pair of socks. It just makes it easier. Makes it way easier. But studies like that are things that you really should do to try and improve, yeah, those you want to try and do. Even though it's pushing you out of your comfort zone and it's not fun, you still need to try and do it. I'm saying that to myself as well as everybody else, because there are things that I need to practice. But stepping out of your comfort zone might pay off in a way you don't expect. A great example could be even just drawing something in a way that you don't usually, like changing a small detail in the way you usually do something. Like the way I do pupils now in the eyes is completely different to how I used to do pupils. Like completely different, like day and night. I used to have the solid black pupils, not the, the circle kind of cut out, the oval cut out in it where you could still see the color. I didn't used to do that. I didn't used to do that at all. And I was worried initially about doing stuff like that because I was like, well, when I eventually, if I eventually get around to doing any kind of comics work, I don't want it to look too cartoony and silly. I was afraid that tweaking it, despite the fact that I saw other people do similar things, even if not the same thing, and would cover serious topics, and would cover serious things in their comics or their illustrations, and it didn't ruin theirs. It didn't at all. It didn't have a negative impact on it. But for some reason it was stuck in my head that it would on mine. But then when I did, I discovered that I really, really liked the effect it had and the way that it made things look. It's like I've gone back and forth in regard to the shape of the irises and the pupils on any of my drawings. Essentially, I look at them and I will go back and forth between, do I want to do round or oval? At this point currently I'm doing oval. We'll see how that goes, because out of nowhere sometimes that will change out of nowhere. But honestly, this even ties into like finding your art style, because playing around with things, trying things and different little things that you like, different details that make up the style. That's how you find your style, is messing around with those different little details and finding the things that you like in the combination that you like. That's how some people discover that they like for characters for their hands to have like 4 fingers instead of, 5. 3 fingers and a thumb instead of 4 fingers and a thumb. Or how they decide they really like the big cartoony expressions. That kind of thing is how I ended up with the parts of the eyebrows on my characters, the eyebrows and the actual eye shape and all that on my characters. That's how they ended up being like halfway erased. They're erased to half opacity if they're under the hair, just because that's how I prefer it. That's how I like it. That's how I think it looks best, at least with my style. And I've incorporated things from other people's styles, like I saw somebody do something similar, so I did something like that. Experimenting is how you find your style. It's how you find the techniques that you enjoy using most. That's like in traditional media. I used to genuinely enjoy markers best for traditional media in regard to coloring. Sketch, lines, and then color was usually Copics. However, I watched some watercolor channels and I tried using it, and I've discovered at this point that I like it more than markers. I still enjoy using markers, but when I do traditional art, if I can, I really enjoy doing watercolor. It just, to me at least, it's a bit more interesting, and it lets me be a bit more loose with my color work and not having to be as precise, and actually help me learn to let myself make mistakes, because sometimes if you move your brush just wrong, the water's gonna go where the water's gonna go and the color's gonna go where the color's gonna go. You have to learn to control it properly, and that's difficult. But if I hadn't branched out and experimented, I wouldn't have discovered I liked that. I wouldn't have discovered I enjoyed digital art. I'm trying to do that with getting into drawing comics. Now, when I was younger, I used to draw all kinds of comics. As an adult, I think the last comic that I drew can be found on my DeviantArt, and it was when Fusion Fall was still a thing, because it was a 4th of July comic, and it was like 4 panels. It was done all traditional with my Copics, and I had some Bic markers, and I drew those, and it had a bunch of characters, Cartoon Network characters, because Fusion Fall again, and I think it was like Firecracker Misfire or something like that. It was really funny, and I really liked it, and I think for as young as I was at the time, I think it was pretty clever. Like, I'm still proud of it. I might do a redraw of that if anybody's interested. Maybe next year for 4th of July I'll do that. I think that could be a lot of fun. It would look really different doing it digitally than it did before. But making a comic for Trace is going to be me branching out into new things anyway. Doing the more, I don't know, it looks kind of... the shading that I do now has a bit more of a texture to it, has a bit more of a slightly painterly look. Still not very much, it still leans very cell shading, but it has a little bit more of a painterly look to it than my shading used to, because I played around. And if you want to branch out on things, that it's completely okay to look to other people for inspiration. Now, if you're really if you're doing a study where you're copying somebody directly, reference that. Reference it, give credit, make note, or don't post it. Pick one, or pick a combo. But you need to at least reference it. But at least most artists, you get some who are not so great, but most artists are going to be flattered that you're using them as inspiration and that their stuff made you want to try something new. That's how I ended up doing anything with art. I think I first came across art YouTube. I came across Jazza, and watching Jazza and his videos and all the things that he was able to draw, that inspired me. Watching a bunch of his character design sessions, I now actually, when I'm working on designing a character, I do more drafts. I do more things where I play around with different things to get the right look. And I didn't used to do that. Even though I spent some time in school for art, I didn't used to do that because most of what I did was leaning more graphic design. We didn't really cover that kind of stuff, at least at the school I was in, which it wasn't an art school. It was a school that happened to offer some art courses. It was a liberal arts college. It was a good school, but I didn't learn those kinds of things. And when I was watching Jazza's character design sessions, I started doing that kind of thing. Watching art YouTubers is how I learned really what thumbnailing was and how to try out different things, different poses, different details. Branching out can be as simple as going into spaces in the art community that you didn't look at before. If you usually watch a bunch of digital artists, maybe watch some traditional artists, see if anything jumps out at you. If you like to draw, maybe look at some crafting videos. See if you find anything there that stands out. We watch a lot of crafting, like resin crafting videos, for the heck of it. If you're a nerd like me, look into learning to make dice. That's fun. I have a lot of fun with that. Regardless, there are so many ways to step out and get yourself out of your comfort zone into trying something new, and you never know what fun you're gonna find when you do it. And you never know what inspiration you're gonna find when you do it. It's like sometimes the way that the swirls and the color schemes of some of the dice that I've made have put color palettes in mind, just the way that they look together. I've gotten ideas for little kind of space-related things because I've got this little mold for a shelf. It's shaped like a crescent moon with a star, and I got ideas from that. You never know what could potentially inspire you, and giving your brain a minute to reset and get out of your comfort zone could even lead you to new ideas when you get back to what you were doing. But if I go on much longer, I'm going to start talking in circles again. I know I've done it a couple times in this, but I think I could use this topic to branch out into other details with everything. If there's anything about it that you guys want to hear about, definitely let me know. I think that would be awesome, and I'd love to hear more about what you guys want to talk about. I am going to have to start spacing out my story times a little bit. I know I did a poll where it was pretty clear people liked the story time videos, but I will say, just because I am just a person, okay? I am just a person. I am going to have to, I think, space out the storytime videos a little bit with the art topics and things about Trace and other project ideas. Because so far with the poll, it looks like we've got, I'm looking at it right now, we've got mostly story times and then some art topics is what people have voted for. But I think I'm gonna have to start spacing them out or I'm going to run out of story times. But I think that's it for today, at least with this topic. Anyway, leave a comment on what you would like to hear about in regard to branching out, like maybe trying a new medium, even watching a new type of media, playing new video games, getting into a genre you've never done before. Instead of visual art, do writing, things like that. Just if you've got any input on it, let me know for sure. But a big shout out to my current patron, Inside Chaos. Thank you so much. It still means so lot. It still means so much that you subscribe to my Patreon. I am just still so floored and excited and flattered for that. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!